video about my research project where we've used Orange data mining software to try to analyse large bodies of student text, giving us feedback about the lessons. So just to remind you, the question that we ask students via Google form is simply asking them to tell us what they think about humanities lessons. So data mining can be really useful for us to understand broad categories of emotion and sentiment. We've looked at three different ways of measuring emotions in the text that students generate for us when giving feedback about our lessons, and we've also looked at sentiment analysis. The larger picture can be very, very useful, but also the fine, more granular detail of what's going on can also be very useful. So in Orange, what we can use something called a corpus viewer. That's just a text viewer, and so we can actually look at the text that the app is analysing. And here what we've done is, using that emotional analysis, it can actually identify the individual statements that is identified associated with the various emotions. So this can be a really good way for you to scan through, so you can see some of the actual statements that students have generated associated here. We've got one associated with joy and two associated with sadness. Good thing about this system is towards the top of the list it will suggest the strongest emotions. So I've picked out joy. This is actually the student that was identified as showing that emotion of joy in the strongest way, and the two here for sadness likewise. So you can focus on what the system has identified as the most emotional statements. Picking up here on the two statements that talk about sadness, you can see that this system does really struggle with analysing paragraphs and students expressing multiple emotions within paragraphs. So you can see here the example of sadness. The students said they actually like the curriculum and the development of critical thinking. So critical is a word that the system will identify and associate with sadness. The student then goes on to make some suggestions of how the lesson could be improved. They've said that they would like to see brain breaks. Again, the system would identify that as students expressing sadness about the lesson. The student is not expressing sadness about a lesson. The student is suggesting how it can be improved. By looking at this, I can quickly see then that this student feels that brain breaks would be a good strategy on making the lesson more accessible and enjoyable. They end with the statement, overall, they really enjoy the humanities lessons so far. So you can see the system struggles where we have mixed emotions within one paragraph. We'll be looking to moving our project forward even further by actually analysing individual sentences rather than entire paragraphs, and hopefully that will give us a more accurate representation that is going on. If we look at the second statement, talked about sadness. Again, it said here, the one that says, I think humanities lessons so far are great. They like that interactivity and engaging nature of it. But again, they talk about instructions being a little bit vague. Vague is a word that the system will pick up and associate with the sadness. So you can see, as with any data mining and artificial intelligence analysis, it's a very, very new. The system will get better over time as it analyses more and more text. You don't need to do anything about that long-term analysis. So when you send data off to the Orange data server, it harvests your data, and this is how the AI improves over a period of time. So if you're using Orange, you don't need to do anything at all about the application learning over time and becoming better. In the next video, we'll go on to look at word clouds and how word clouds can be a useful way for you to understand what is going on in your lesson. Also for you to see student voice and then share that student voice with students, and then explain to students the interventions that you're putting in place based on their student voice.